Jeff, you had mentioned your business also operates, Elevate Technologies. You guys operate in the Pacific Northwest region, but you also cover over Hawaii. I mean, you mentioned that as well. So why don't you tell us a little bit about some of your deployments there and what sort of applications are required? What are you looking for, Jeff, when you set out to deploy a network and architect a network that you're going to deploy in a state that's, it's a 3.5 hour, 4 hour flight from you, right? So tell us about that. What do you look for?
Yeah, well, and on top of the flight nowadays, the flight isn't expensive over there right now. It's the car rentals, right? I don't know if you've heard that lately, but the car rentals they're non-existent for the most part. So the cost went way up, right? But what you're really looking for is you're looking for products that can be flexible, right? You want the Swiss Army knife in your bag, so that you can ship equipment out to a location that's pre-configured, right? And you have the ability to get feedback from that equipment before the users do, right? So this is a great example, is that we had pre-configured equipment for a school out on the islands, and they are a school that have a big outdoor focus, right? Their focus of outdoor was prior to COVID and even became more after COVID hit, right? So as we originally went over there and looked at the location, we were asked to make sure that the picnic tables have Wi-Fi so that the Chromebooks can connect, right? And the iPads and the watches and the teachers' equipment. And all of a sudden you have mobile whiteboards and things like that, right? And so, the deployment really became a density and coverage conversation versus one or the other. We usually have hey, we have this location, just focus on the density of that location, right? In this case, it was density and coverage across multiple buildings and a fairly large campus, right? So, so that was really something where the tools that we had to send out there, Cambium XP access points and the outdoor ones that we're talking about here, right, were those tools. And the people that were on site did not have to have engineering background in wireless, right, or carry extra tools necessarily around. We could get a lot of that feedback straight out of the access point and the interface on those access points to provide that engineering remotely.
So Jeff, you've given us two use cases. The first one you talked about was this track event in Oregon, outside of Eugene, Oregon. So I can imagine it's a fairly rural area, and I don't think you had any Wi-Fi interference out there. Is that safe to say?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
None. Zero.
Well, it's kind of the good news and the bad news, right? No, there's no wireless out there. That's the bad news, and it's also the good news. Now, your second deployment, is it the same? Did you, when you deployed in Hawaii, what sort of interference did you see there?
Yeah,
did you have to deal with that at all?
So very interesting, right? There was an existing wireless network in the facility that couldn't come down while we were deploying the new one, right? And then, of course, there are neighbors around that area that are other businesses and homes. And so I remember in one part of the campus, one of the buildings was heavily impacted with neighbors that was apartment complex and nice big wide channels for their slow DSL services that were there. We always love when those defaults are put in place. And then, of course, the existing wireless network that's on campus that we had to kind of commingle with for a while, right? And as we continue through these deployments, it becomes more and more apparent. Standardizing on Wi-Fi 6 is going to help a lot with that. But yes, there was interference in different areas, right? The outdoor interference was very different than obviously the indoor stuff. And then self-interference is always a question mark when you're dealing with multiple systems that are controlled from multiple controllers and things like that. So yes, very different. There was a lot of noise around the area, as well as the noise floor that was a lot higher, right? Obviously. And then also things that were moving. Those automatic channel selecting home routers are a pain, right? And you have to identify how are you going to do that without knocking on everybody's door and asking them if you could change their Wi-Fi setting, because that's not going to happen.
Yeah, because they're going to agree to that.
Right, exactly. And of course, everyone just wants to turn their power up because they think that's going to fix the issue, right? And that's not always the answer. But yes, very different environment and very different use for the tool that was in the tool bag.
Good. Well, I'm glad you had the tools you needed to deal with that. I always love it when you have these default settings, 80 megahertz wide channel, then you connect it to a a 20 megabit per second DSL service, and you kind of wonder why using so much spectrum. But just it just causes a lot of complexity. But that's the world we live in, though, right? We can that's just the reality today, and it's going to it's not going to get any better. It's just going to continue that way. So we have to learn how to deal with it. Did you have the tools and the equipment to deal with that kind of interference?
Yeah, we absolutely did. And we had the visibility into understanding likely what the user experience was as well, right? With some of the quality metrics and understanding retransmits and MCS levels and stuff like that. So there was a definite positive in the tool bag.